Hello, I am the Awkward GM Corbin, and with me today is creator of Curseborne. Please introduce yourself, Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle Lauzon. I was I guess the lead developer on Curseborne, but creator is kind of a strong word. It was co-created between myself, Eddie Webb, and Matthew Dawkins, um, along with Dixie Cochran and Rich Thomas and everyone else internal to Onyx Path, plus a bunch of authors. So yeah, it's a very large collaborative effort over many years.
Yeah, and it was in development for like how long?
I don't actually know the exact time. I know that I was brought onto the project at the end of 2019, and like I say end mid 2019. Um, we worked on we were working on a setting Bible. We were working on just like a general outline of what we wanted, what did we wanted it to look like, all of those things. We had some people write some setting material to try to get a setting feeling for what we wanted to see in the game itself. And those were written essentially pre-writing the book itself. Um, in 2019. I know that this had been being talked about prior to my coming on the project, maybe for about a year before that.
So when you started working on the project, had the name been chosen? Had the like focus had been narrowed down?
No, no. At when I came onto it, we were at the time calling it Scion Dark, um,
Oh,
which was literally just a code name for um, is this just like a monster version of Scion? And it quickly was, it's not that, it's something completely different. And we transitioned quickly from that to the to Untitled Monster Game, which we used until Curseborne was chosen as the name.
awesome. If I were to ask specifically, like, what target audience is Curseborne for? Are you like who are you aiming to
To pull
sell
in.
to pull in? Yeah.
Curseborne is for people who like horror, but also people who like personal stories, people who like strangeness and like weirdness, or people who like stories that aren't just bleak all the time, right? A lot of there's multiple ways to do horror. I could have a whole hour long. Got my eye on you. I could do a whole hour long talk on the different ways to do horror. Go. Yes. So what we chose to dig into is that there is the movie trope of you might not be able to actually truly defeat the horrible thing, but you can survive it. And usually those stories are not necessarily about a monster. I like you can do a monster story in Curseborne, but that's not really what it's about. What it's about is the kind of story where everybody goes together and they realize there's something weird and they're trying to understand it and they try to figure it out. And at the end, the real like I guess the culmination isn't we defeated it or we survived it, but instead it's that we figured out how to continue on despite its effects on us. we it's the friends we made along the way. And I know that that's a very silly thing, but it is kind of the tone of Curseborne isn't, yeah, you may investigate something and you may defeat something evil. Um, you are a monster though. And your world, you're making your world moderately better by doing those things, but your world is not getting better. There's no fixing how kind of awful everything is. So you're doing small acts of kindness, you're doing small acts of community, you're doing small acts of togetherness to persevere. And honestly, we wrote that in 2019, or started, this game in 2019, because we had spent several years under, I don't want to get too political, but uh, under some circumstances that made everyone kind of feel like we really needed a game about how community, no matter how terrible things are around you, and now no matter how hopeless and helpless you feel, you can always reach out to your community, and community is always worthwhile. And we wanted a horror game that spoke to those themes. We started writing on it. And now that I'm looking at where we are right now, this is pertinent again. And I'm glad we started making it, because it is for people who like horror, but like a reminder that even if everything sucks, you can find joy in the darkness around you, the gloom, the existential dread, the pressing horrors of daily existence. So
It's the perfect time for it to come out, honestly. I've I was very happy to see. Well, I didn't see the email. I saw the conversation first when the backer PDF copy came out, and
yeah,
I spent my entire afternoon after work just pouring through it, just to fan out a little bit. The art is amazing.
the art is very good.
And I
We've
was
been, well, go ahead, but I have a little
Yeah, go
insight
for it.
into that. We've been working on the art for Curseborne for about 2 years. We started writing up art notes and talking about the direction of the art and what we wanted it to look like. Honestly, Dixie had a mood board on Pinterest when we were first, like while we were outlining the book, to help authors draw the right, like evoke the right things. And then we took that mood board and we started writing art notes, several, like before the book was done, so that we could pull in artists. And we poured through artist portfolios, all like Dixie, myself, Mike, and Rich, for hours, and contacted people. Some people didn't respond, some people did. We got as many people as we could get whose art really hit the vibe of what we were looking for. Had them do some of those uh, fulls that are in the book that you see, some that didn't make it into the book, but will probably make it into the player's guide. Essentially, we're like, can you do like these 2 or 3 pieces that are test pieces, so that we can see that you're hitting the right notes, and then we can, go back and forth. And then we had all of those as our art references for getting the rest of the smaller art pieces done throughout the book. And it really paid off starting so early, and just kind of trying to hit the vibes and working for a really long time with the artists to get that art done. And I mean, that initial Curseborne promotional, what is Curseborne, with the red cathedral, that was one of those initial test pieces that we had commissioned. So yeah, we had been working on that art for a very long time.
Yeah, I have that preview copy somewhere in this room somewhere.
Yeah.
If you want to see what happens, you better like this video, smash that subscribe button, and turn on notifications.
It's interesting because when we first got the Curseborne Kickstarter happening, you had the sort of like mock-up of the Get of Leica with that art of the werewolf, and then I forget how long ago, but like a few months ago, we got the preview art of another werewolf in like punk getup and everything, like the Izzy Plumber, I think, from
Yes.
the Ashcan.
Yes.
And that's now the icon for Get of Leica, and it replaced it. It was like crazy how that stuff can change. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like Mike and Rich have been really intentional with all of the design for this book and the art and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, if you backed for the core book and you're getting the stretch goals, the making of, they go into a lot about the process, how they chose art, how they did their design, how they did all those kinds of things. So it's an like I yeah, there's so much, but there's like a whole book that we've written about the making of this game because it did take so long and so much effort. And also it's weird, like we did make a lot of jokes. I think I've talked about this before. We made a lot of jokes about how like, oh, there, we must be cursed because XYZ thing got lost or got broken or the internet's not working or, we lost a video or it fuzz, and none of that stuff was made up. Like every single time we talked about that was like legitimately a thing that had happened to set the project back.
Oh no, that's crazy.
It's crazy.
Well, it definitely has, like, to harken back to what you said earlier, like, you needed that journey to get to where it is now, which
Yes.
is, in my opinion, a pretty awesome book from what I've seen so far. I can't wait to get my hardcover in the mail whenever that ends up happening.
I mean, same.
Yeah. I've heard I'm excited for the behind the scenes stuff. Sadly, I didn't get the deluxe copy, so I'm hoping that goes on like a PDF or something for drive through, because I really want to read into it, because I just, as a aspiring game designer, someone who went through college for that, I really like seeing how the sausage gets made, as it were.
Yeah. I mean, we talk we talk a lot about that kind of stuff in some of the interviews we've done. And, we've been real open about some of the processes because it's like the process whenever you're a brand new, whatever you are, game designer or company or publishing company or whatever. A lot of the processes is trial and error where you try something and, and we essentially, it's like we're a brand new game company, but we're not. We have so many years of experience collectively. Um, so instead of trying something bad and throwing out something bad to try to get something good, we started with, okay, we've got a good game here, but how do we make it better? Like
And
we've got good stuff here. How do we make it look cooler, nicer? How do we elevate it to where we want it?
and given that Onyx Path has done work on other urban horror game lines, how was it trying to differentiate Curseborne from, say, World of Darkness and Chronicles of Darkness?
Yeah, that's actually a real legitimate question because we all have worked in the Chronicles of Darkness, World of Darkness. Some of us were there when it was first started, looking at Rich and Mike. Some of us not so much, but have worked on it through the years. And yeah, a lot of our freelancers that we trust and work with a lot have also worked on these things. So even when we were first writing those initial, okay, let's write up, what do these things look like? What is it structured like? How do we do all these things? Um, you know, some of the pushes that came were pushed from internally going, okay, well that sounds like World of Darkness. How do we move away from that? So we'd have our initial like, okay, well this is different. Here's a pitch. And it's like, okay, but this is how that could easily be like a line drawn back to World of Darkness. So I want something very different from that. And, throughout the process, I know it was Dixie who first was like, hey, if we're going to have, 5 different lineages, we should put them all in one book together and have them play together. That right there is already completely different from World of Darkness and Chronicles of Darkness, where we design, we're like the intention was always we're going to design all of these to work together. But she's like, if we're going to design them to work together, we might as well just put them all in one book. And there was, back and forth on that, but eventually it came down to absolutely, this is what we want to do. Because even if we can't put all of the lore, all of the this, everything anybody's ever going to want to know about these lineages into the core book, we can give enough information that people are really hyped about them and want to read more about them. And we can always do deeper dives in later books, which is what we're doing with the player's guide. So it became a, no, we want to pull as much as we can into this book. And then that was, the initial, we had some people write up initial, like, okay, let's talk about the different lineages. What do they look like? And that was specifically, let's pull some people in, let's get an initial pitch for what do these look like, and then let's iterate on that to make them as unique as we can. Rich sent out a survey. I say survey, but it was just, he sent an email and he was like, I want you to answer these like kind of questions for every lineage that we have, right? Which was, what do you like the most about this, media that includes this thing? What is, like, what's your favorite thing about it? What like draws you to vampire movies? What draws you to werewolf movies? What do you like about those things? And then also, like, what is your, like, what do you think of when you think of a werewolf or a vampire or a ghost stories, things like that? I don't want to know. And then also, like, what did you like about what World of Darkness did and Chronicles of Darkness did? So we looked at what we liked from media, from the previous things we've worked on, and then said, okay, everybody said they like sexy vampires from media. Okay, fine. Everybody except for this one person over here who, that's okay. But then it's like, okay, well, we like ghost stories where the ghost is the sympathetic one, right? There's tons of ghost stories where it's like, oh, there's a ghost. There's the whole Conjuring series where it's demons or ghosts, and you're not sure which. It's all demons, actually. But you see this kind of from the side of the exorcist, right? Somebody's been possessed, somebody's been haunted, their house has been haunted, the house doesn't want you there, and you get the perspective of the person who's trying to move in and is being terrorized by a ghost. I really like stories that give you a perspective of the ghost, and we're like, we want to do that because we want this to be playable characters. And then we started digging up media where ghosts are the center of the story and the protagonist of the story, not the antagonist of the story. And there's not a lot, actually. A bit of an untapped concept, in my opinion. But then a bunch of stuff, while we were writing this, a bunch of stuff came out, like the Dead Boy Detectives, and the there's a, oh, what is it called? There's a show about a girl who dies and she's trying to serve as a
Oh,
ghost, trying to solve her own murder in like a
is
high
it
school.
Spirit Week?
It's Spirit High, I think is what
Spirit
it's
High?
called. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my wife had been watching that.
Yeah, I mean, it's YA, but it is YA, but it's a murder mystery, right? She's trying to solve her own murder as a ghost who cannot interact with the world. But then she finds a person who can hear her, that she can talk, like a person who's still alive who can hear her, and that person starts helping her investigate. And so I was like, oh, this is actually really, like, this is the kind of story I want Dead to be able to tell. And the Dead Boy Detectives is really good as this is the kind of story that I want Dead to be able to tell, right? Like, we're just doing these things. So the more those kinds of things came out, the more we, pull on them for inspiration. But then also there's other media where I go, okay, well, look at this kind of kitschy YA show where werewolves and sorcerers are all in like a magical college together. Um, like, let's it's not great media, but sometimes bad media gives great inspiration.
I agreed. And I kind of want to thank you in regards to trying to deviate from what has already come out, because for me, I was a big werewolf fan before playing any Chronicle, like Werewolf the Apocalypse or
Right,
Werewolf the
right.
Forsaken. And for me, the whole spirit stuff comes out of nowhere for me when it comes to Werewolf, the Apocalypse, and Forsaken. I'm like, why can't I just be a person who transforms into a werewolf?
Yeah, I also, as a fan of, things like American Werewolf in London and Teen Wolf and plenty of other werewolf media, because, I'm dating myself here. Uh, as I was growing up, when I encountered Apocalypse, I was like, where did all this like earth loving, like eco warrior stuff come from? Like, where did it come from? I don't know the inspiration behind that. And so, when we're talking about, well, we're going to do werewolves, I'm like, can we please not make them earth loving eco warriors? Can we just make them like, I would like not to be too on the nose, but can we just make them like the werewolves in True Blood? Like, can they just be kind of territorial assholes who will kick your butt if you get like they're a biker gang or something? Like, can we just do that? And
Oh
then we
yeah,
did.
I feel that a lot. That's the werewolf. I grew up with Wolfman, like the original, like Abbott and Costello watching the Wolfman fighting Dracula, and it was like, where
Yep.
never had they ever mentioned anything like that. And the whole territory stuff is such my favorite aspect of those types of werewolf stories. Anyway,
Yeah.
I did have a question, because I have a list from people who I asked on Reddit and Discord, and you had mentioned before about like the process of building the core rule book and everything. And I know, because this is a physical book, there's word count limits and everything like that. What was the process of deciding like what gets to stay in the core rule book versus like what gets pushed over into, say, the player's guide or future supplements?
So that's actually really interesting because nothing, so all of these decisions were made before anything was written. Let's make that very clear, because we never want to like write a bunch of stuff and then pull it out and then hope to be able to slot it somewhere in the future. Like, that's that's not great. Nobody wants to do that. So instead, we did have some discussions. Okay, we're getting the core ready. How do we want to structure this? What kinds of supplements will we make? What kinds of, how are we going to expand on this, right? And part of it was, we don't know how this is going to do. This is brand new to us. Yes, we have an audience that are used to horror games from us, but we are trying to make it very different from the stuff that they're used to seeing. So, a lot of people I've noticed come in and go like, well, is this just a successor to the World of Darkness? How is this like the World of Darkness? How is this like the Chronicles of Darkness? And everybody comes in with that preconceived notion. And so if they start reading it and they go, well, this is not anything like World of Darkness, I hate it, then we don't have an audience anymore. So we had to kind of prepare, like we had no idea what it was going to be like. Right? We had no idea how people were going to react. We liked it, but we weren't sure if other people were going to like it. So we had to plan for kind of a small scale. If this doesn't do very well, what do we plan for? And then if this blows up and it does really well, what do we plan for? So the first thing that we did was we definitely made a plan for having entanglement levels be separated into types of play. Now, and this was originally part of kind of the back, I said we called it Scion Dark. It was never supposed to be like Scion, but it was the concept of, for this style of street level play, you're going to play the Curseborne core. And then if you want this other style of play, you will play the next entanglement level up. And when you want this style of play, you will play this entanglement level up. And we knew we wanted to do that. And we talked back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on how many different types of, things were we going to do? What would that look like? How does that look? What do we do? What do we reserve for that kind of thing? We made some really strong decisions about I'm going to call them tiers of play, but they're not tiers. Not like anybody who knows anything about story path is going to be like, oh, they're going to be, you know, tier 1, 2, 3. That doesn't exist in story
So
path ultra at all.
so when we get to Entanglement 10, we're not going to be gods from Scion God.
No, you're not gonna. It's not gonna change your target number. It's not gonna change your dice. Like it's not gonna change your attribute skill. Maybe you might have the ability to have those numbers go up to like a 6. I don't know. We haven't decided the mechanical changes yet, but we know that it's not actually about increasing numbers go up. It's about the scope of play that you're playing in.
So this is all sort of, you're still workshopping, still have like, there's a general idea, but it hasn't been finalized yet.
So that's true for everything. So just like I talked about the core book where, you know, we had a lot of like outlining and stuff like that. Honestly, until we have the book written, it's up in the air. Right. So we have, you know, we have some good firm outlines and some firm concepts of what we're going to be doing. But once we write it, then we'll truly know, okay, this is what this turned into. It's so weird to be able to say that like we have plans, but every plan uh, has to survive first contact with the other people who are writing the thing and their interpretation of what we've said, and then also what works and what doesn't once we've seen it written. So yeah, it is kind of in flux in the sense that it's never set in stone until it's set in stone and printed in ink, but we don't have like, it is not hugely subject to change unless we just find that like, oh, we started working on this thing and the thing we thought was going to work just isn't working at all. There are a couple of systems that we thought, okay, we might want to, like originally I had kind of written a system, like we have a bunch of subsystems that I've written for all tiers of play. And we thought about it and we were like, actually, it might be better to reserve that system for a higher tier of play. So we're not going to include that in the core book. So if anything like that happened, it was because of a tier of play situation where it's like, okay, well, we're going to include that in the next tier of play because it doesn't make a lot of sense for this street level focus game to be, you know, dealing with this kind of more global situation. And we have a lot of things that like we concepted and then we're like, okay, we're going to set that in our ideas bin for different tiers of play.
There's been a discussion, especially in the Discord, over, I think since the core Kickstarter originally started, in regards to Freeform Magic systems, and that is something that for myself, like, well, let me back away. It doesn't matter what I think, but in regards to the community as a whole, it seems like there's a lot of discussion about maybe that's something that could be in a future supplement for a higher tier of play to have that. What have you thought of that?
I hate freeform magic systems. I'm just going to throw that out there. I know I'm so sorry to crush all the souls of the people who really want a freeform magic system. I hate them. And here's the reason I hate them. You can already make any spell you want in this game. Just follow the general concepts that we have created and make a spell that does something that we haven't, you know, made yet. Done. Am I going to codify rules for it? I just don't know. If we figure out some way that doesn't make me hate it, maybe. But that's a lot of brain work that I haven't started on yet, because the thing that I don't like about a freeform system is the decision paralysis. Because anytime you're okay, well, how long should it last? How far should it go? How many people can it affect? What can it affect? And what does it do? And I've got to explain to you how to make all of those decisions on the fly turns out you can't make all those decisions on the fly. You have to say, I'd like to freeform cast a spell. Now let me spend 10 minutes building a spell. What I would really love to be able to do is say, define an effect, just define the effect, and then roll for it and see if it happens. But if I tell players, any player, even my own players at my own table to do that, they go, I can do anything? Yes. And then they're like, I don't know what to do. I've never had a thought of anything I'd ever want to do in my life because it's too much. So you either have to narrow down all the things you could do and give lists and tables, and then people pour through them every time they want to free cast a spell, or they have one or two things that they have decided are a cool thing they want to do that they've kind of mapped out a spell for. I think you're not going to see free casting spells, like just fast cast an effect that anything you want. I think the more likely thing, and this is not a promise, this is going to show up in a book, but my more likely answer at this moment is you're going to see a system that tells you how the accursed invent new spells within their practices. And then they become a practice spell that is codified in the same way that all of the spells are codified.
That actually segues nicely into another question I had, which was, are we going to see sort of guidelines for for creating our own spells, families, and stuff?
So on an out of character, like a how does the story guide make a family? How do you, the player, build a family because you want to have a cool family that's unique and we didn't cover the kind of thing? Honestly, like, I don't think we'll ever write guidelines for that because it's as simple as make a path, come up with some motifs.
Yeah, and those are going to be in the Story Path Ultra Core Manual,
Right.
essentially.
Like, yeah, we already have instructions on how to build paths, how to conceptually think about a path and make one in Story Path Ultra. And the motifs are all pretty self-explanatory, or just pick a couple of motifs from some of the families that you like that fit the themes of the family you're making, and then everything else is just the narrative story of the group that you're trying to make, which I'm certain you already have. Because if you're wanting to make a new thing, it's because you already know what you want them to do and what you want them to be. So at that point, and the only thing is I want them to be major and I want to know their inheritance. And even that is pretty, like, hard to really describe how to do that because it's mostly just maybe mimic some of the other inheritances or do something similar to what they've done. And again, all of the how to make a power stuff will be in the Story Path Ultra book. So for how we built all of the lineage practice spells, how to make a power from the Story Path Ultra is what we handed to the authors and said, this is how you make powers for this game. So make some powers. And then they did. So
Yeah, it's a good resource for that. I've definitely looked into it when I've been doing some of my home brewing, and it's been nice to like lean into that. With the whole talking about future supplements, I know a few have been announced. I mean, we do have the player's guide currently on Kickstarter.
yes.
What are the other supplements that are currently announced that you can talk about, if you can? If you, if you, yeah, sorry.
So the other supplements that we have so far are just the ones that we have. The ones that we've announced are all of the ones that have been sourced through the core Kickstarter. So we have the the locations book. That we have a fiction anthology and we have an adventure book. And so all of those are at various stages of production. Most of them have been written and are in various states of editing or going to layout for art notes, that kind of thing. Because we wanted all of that stuff. Essentially, we didn't want to be writing any of that stuff when we got started writing on whatever supplements come out of the player's guide.
Gotcha. And the location book, is that Seattle? I forgot. There one mentioned.
So the locations book from the Kickstarter is a book about I think we have like 4 or 5 different kind of setting like real world setting places that we are just gonna kind of write about, write a little story about, write some antagonists that will show up there, and some story seeds of things to do there. That is a supplement that came out of the crowdfunder, the Kickstarter for Curseborne. The Seattle book is a completely separate source book. I didn't realize that had been fully announced. So
yeah, it was. I remember because it was Onyx PathCon.
Onyx PathCon, that's right.
You guys talked about it.
Okay, yeah, that is right. I even though that was a couple of months ago, it's for me. It all runs together. I know that this is a game that we have been talking about. This is a book we've been talking about for a while, and knowing whether it's been announced or not is kind of like. Yeah.
I'll do my best to.
Yeah. But you mentioned it, which means it's been announced. So yeah, Seattle has been announced. We do have that one starting production. I don't know anything about it yet because we literally haven't started writing it yet. Other than I know that Matthew and Dixie are co-developing it, and they are they're trying to find authors and people who currently live in the city just to try to get the most lived / knowledgeable experts for that place to talk about whatever weird liminal kind of spaces. I know that the goal there is to not just have here's everything that you could need to run this city as a story, but instead here's how to build a city for your own game using Seattle as an example. Here are the families that would be important there. Here's what the families are doing there. Here's the areas that they live in. Here's kind of the dynamics in this city, things to take into account when fleshing out your own setting, city setting for the game.
Awesome. And you mentioned that it's Dixie's and Matthew's project at the moment. With the player's guide, were you are you how do I put this? So were you also developing that, or is that a subgroup of developers?
So I developed the Eddie and I developed the player's guide. The my official title was the lead writer on the player's guide, which just meant that I my developmental pass on the player's guide was the writing and the lore and the setting and all that, and then Eddie did a lot of the administrative and then follow up development after. He developed, of course, the writing that I did on the book, and some other, he did all the what's I there's a lot of stuff you do as a developer that's just like, oh man, I gotta file pay schedules or send out emails or remind people that their first drafts are due, or administrative stuff. And Eddie handled all that stuff while I concentrated on the writing aspect of things.
Awesome. And I apologies to go back to the Seattle book. Is it likely that that's going to be its own separate Kickstarter?
I have
No
No idea.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
worries.
Yeah, that's
I thought as much.
yeah. I don't know because that's so far in the future and we don't really make those decisions until we're closer to the decision making part of okay, because we don't know when it'll be done. We don't know where we'll be in other production. We don't know what else will be in production at the time. We also don't know what the state of the world will be like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just don't know.
In regards to the player's guide, the decision to start the Kickstarter before the player's hand before I mixed up my words. Sorry. So in regards to the player's guide, the doing the Kickstarter before the core book had fully been released, or even the backer copy had been released. What was behind that decision, if you're allowed to say?
So we always intended to have a backer PDF ready before the player's guide went to like live on Kickstarter. We had, as we always do, so many like technical issues and some not technical issues, just some like okay, well we got art and we did the art and then we we're placing art and we didn't have all the art in yet because we had to like we realized we needed more art for more things, or some people had life events happen on some of the smaller pieces, and so a lot of people commented like those there's just blank spaces in some parts of the book, and it's like, well, yeah, because we wanted to get this out to you as a PDF before this crowdfunder went live, and it became very evident towards the closer and closer we got to this crowdfunder that that wasn't going to happen unless we just had some art holes, um, or even some like small design decisions that weren't perfect yet. So, maybe not every single sidebar texture is going to be the way it looks in the final. Maybe not every, you know, box around text is going to look the same in the final, but we wanted it as close as possible. And some of the bigger design decisions, like those, full color page splats for the families, some of those, the full color spreads at the beginning of chapters, things like that, that we spent a lot of time working on, going back and forth, seeing a version of it, and then Mike would redo it, and we'd see another version of it, and we'd talking about there's some minutia that like people don't think about for layout that is and graphic design that like it takes a long time, but and no like it will take a long time, hours of work, and most people will just not even notice what happened, but will somehow go, oh yeah, that is easier to read. Like, and it's because we tried 8 different fonts until we found one that didn't make your eyes bleed after an hour of reading. But for 5 minutes of reading, it feels no different. Like it's just there's a lot of small things and we had to go back and forth a lot. And so a lot of that was happening, which made the book take longer because it again, just like every other aspect of this book, it was like being a brand new company who's never done anything before, even though collectively, Mike and Rich have like over 50 years of experience in layout and design, but they're trying not to just lean on all of their old, like, okay, well, you have perfected this method. So how do we learn from that to make something look new as opposed to just using the same layout techniques we've always been using? Which made it take a while and made it a very intense effort. And so, yeah, it just became we're getting closer and closer to October. We had held off announcing the Player's Guide crowdfunder as long as we could, but then we were like, okay, but if we don't ever announce it, we're going to wind up missing October. And we really wanted to do it in October. So it's like, okay, do we announce it before the PDF goes out, or do we announce it after the PDF goes out, literally 3 days before it goes live? And the decision is we will announce it People can do whatever they're going to do to react, but we're still going to deliver that PDF before it goes live. And that's what happened.
Well, it worked out for you in the end, I feel. I very much appreciate having that backer PDF now.
I figured everyone would.
Yeah. And I what was it? There was, so with like the errata phase after the Kickstarter, and even now the errata phase just finished on the
Yes.
backer PDF. What are like some of the major surprises or like improvements that have come out from that you can talk about?
So, between the backer manuscript and the the PDF version, everybody I think most caught on that we really kind of dug into the lineage mechanics, the individual lineage mechanics, and how the special mechanics work, and really kind of making those as clear as possible. I I always envision this game, I don't want to say more narrative. Like, it is more narrative, but it's still using a very traditional rule set and a very traditional dice pool system. So, where there is a thing that happens, it needs to occur with a dice pool, and it needs to have some kind of, mechanical effect, and, all these kind of things. And the two biggest places that I think, well, the biggest place that I think people struggled was, how do I represent the damnation that my character is under? Not just when they're suffering from it, but just in general, right? You're a vampire, you're a hungry, and I have to eat. What does that look like? And my answer had constantly been, whatever you want it to look like. It's your character. How do you go out and do these things? Like, if I were a GM and you said to me, okay, well, I need blood to survive. I'm going to go I'm going to go try to get blood. I'm like, okay, how are you doing that? And they would say, well, I'd be like, who are you looking for? How are you going to do that? Are you going to talk to somebody and try to convince them to come home with you and wine and dine them, make them pass out and steal a little blood? Are you going to, like, what are you going to do? Anything that you want to do, we will run with. But I'm not just going to tell you, okay, you go out and you do the thing and then you come back. And I never wanted that to be the way anybody handled their drawbacks and their damnations. And so putting limiters on those things felt really artificial, because how your character, especially because it starts to get into the territory of pre-describing how everything works. And I know that there are definitely people who really want to be told how everything works metaphysically, physically, mechanically. But at some point, the GM has to, like, the story guide has to run the game, not me. I'm not going to come to your house and run your game for you. So, in fact, I'm not going to come to your house, even if you invite me, because you probably live in another state. Uh, and that's a lot of effort. But it is, there is a balance between providing some guidelines and providing some, you know, something to pull from, and not providing too much. And so I think I didn't provide enough initially when we did the damnation mechanics and the lineage mechanics. And there were so many comments like, we really don't understand how to do this. And so Matthew went through and was like, okay, let's give some mechanical hooks into, okay, well, this is what this means, and this is what this damnation means, and this is, how this manifests. Okay, fine. So we did that. And of course, I looked at what Matthew did, and we wound up getting into, I won't call it an argument because it wasn't an argument. It was a very civil discussion through Discord, in which I said, I don't like that. And he said, but the players want it. And Eddie said, yeah, the players want it. D, like, just get over it. And I said, fine. Uh, but I'll edit them so that they look a little less like a bunch of tables. Uh, And so we met in the middle and had kind of a happy middle ground, which is what you wind up seeing in the Backer PDF. And everybody's overwhelming response to that of, oh, this is so much better. It didn't surprise me after the fact, but it did kind of do the thing where it's like I always have to remember that not everybody reading anything I write is me, right? And they don't read and interpret things the way I do, and they don't have the same, like if they knew how to just make a game for themselves, they probably wouldn't be buying game books to read to make the game for them. Actually, they would because I do. But it's different, right? Like it there is a bit that people need more than what I was giving. And that was, I don't want to call it surprising because it shouldn't have been, but it was a little surprising to me.
I think to an extent there is definitely like the sort of D&D, the expectation, like the one thing that keeps people from that I know that keeps people from moving away from Dungeons and Dragons is like the lack of a monster manual. And when we get into like story path, there's like a set number of adversaries, but giving, like, you give all the like qualities and the abilities that they have, and you're like, here, go nuts, make your own. But then it's like the Lego pieces, they don't know, like
How
they
they
can
fit together, right?
they can put them together, but they can't make us like something beautiful out of it on their own.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that's, to a certain degree, that is you know, I think a problem that a lot of people have, and I don't want to say that it's a creativity problem because it's not. It is. Sometimes you come home from work, you've been working all day, you're really, really tired, and you're like, I would love to write a really cool setting, and I have all these ideas, but having the time and the energy and the creative mindset to sit down and write up a city setting, or even just like I made a couple of new spells for this thing, or I made a couple of new antagonists for this story, is difficult for people, rightfully so, especially the busier your life gets, the more you're digging into work and the more you are dealing with stressors and all sorts of things that we as adults have to deal with. We're not kids anymore. And then for the people who can just make stuff up, they're going to be fine whether we give them a predefined list or not, right? Like they're going to be fine. There's the people who just like, man, I just need to be able to slap a monster onto this thing. Please give me cool monsters to slap onto this thing. Or I just need to know, what does it look like when my character does this thing so that I can not have to rub more than 3 brain cells together tonight because I just spent all day doing that at work, which I get 100%.
Yeah, it's the I think it's like the GM drought situation. I would assume.
Oh yeah, everybody, the always the GM, never the player kind of thing.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
it can be tough,
it sure can.
but I definitely the the amount of, I think, at least from a community standpoint, talking with people, it seems like the primal forms were something that everyone loved when they saw, like,
Yes,
the fleshing out mechanically what's there narratively really
right.
helped a lot.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you.
Well, I mean, especially for the primal, anything that you love in the primal, you can really thank Matthew for because he kind of adopted them, I think, as his favorite. I don't know if they are, but he definitely did a lot of work on them to make them kind of what they are now. So yeah, I think that's the, like, giving credit where credit is due. Matthew did a phenomenal job on the primal and making them sing more than they had previously. So,
And which of the lineages would you say is yours, the one that you put
So my lineages, so the two that I wrote and then did the most like mechanically, well, I did mechanics for all of them because I just did all the mechanics in most of them. But the dead and the sorcerers are the two that I wrote. And they're the two that I kind of like. I think the sorcerers is the one that I poured most of myself into. Where the dead, I just really love the concept of playing a dead. So they're kind of my little babies. So of course, when we went to write the player's guide, so the player's guide got new authors on it, people who hadn't worked on Curseborne before, and of course they all have their like, oh, I really want to write a new thing in this new setting, and I have all these ideas, and everybody wanted to write a dead. So and I was like, okay, well, everybody can't go writing dead. So I do want to write some dead, but I'll just write one and then I'll write, something else and whatever we need once everybody else has picked. And I was like, but maybe it'll be a sorcerer. And then, of course, David Castro was like, the sorcerers are the coolest. Please let me write them. And I was like, okay, fine. Yes, yes, you can write the sorcerers. That's fine. I'm not crying about it or anything. And I wound up writing the plague doctors for the Hungry because everybody was like, yeah, we've done enough vampires. I want to write something for one of the other lineages that nobody, like, because it's newish to me, right? And I was like, well, of course we need more Hungry. And so I was like, I'm going to do the plague doctors because I want to do a group that is just gross but cool. It's like if I had to sum myself up in a single phrase, it would be gross but cool. Uh, so yeah, that's kind of where that went. But yeah, I'm a big fan of doing anything and everything I can for sorcerers and for dead. Honestly, for all the lineages, it's actually really hard for me to pick favorites because I think that they are all really cool and really fun, and have their own like theming that really works for them. So
Awesome. And we're about coming up on time. Any last words you want to give to anyone who's still on the fence with Curseborne?
uh you know if you're still on the fence, I believe the um Ashcan is free right now during the Player's Guide Kickstarter. So you could go pick it up. You can take a look at it. You can give it a moment to kind of, understand what you're looking at, some of the mechanics there. Give it a try. And if you're still on the fence after that, because I feel like that Ashcan is really cool. I feel like the scenario in there is really kind of indicative of the kinds of things that you're going to be doing in Curseborne. But if you're just like, nope, I still am not sure. I think I might, want to do something else. Okay, fine. I will say that this is a game where you can kind of do your power fantasy monsters without consequence. The only consequences are the ones that you create for yourself. And I think after playing whatever power fantasy using powers without consequence for like however long you're going to do it, eventually somebody is going to let their character succumb to their damnation, and they're going to go through a damnation scene, and then everybody else is going to be like, I want to do that because that was heckin' cool. And that is how I'm selling you that like you're going to want your characters to suffer and fail because it's going to be cool as heck.
Oh yeah, that was my last episode of Accursed in Boston. We had one of our sorcerer players hit their damnation, and it was the first time we did it. And man, that changed the dynamic pretty quickly. That changed the happy-go-lucky group into, oh god, how do we deal with a friend who is going through magic addiction right now.
Right. And could hurt, is a danger to themselves and others.
Exactly.
Mostly others.
Mostly. Yeah.
Mostly innocent bystanders. Yeah, like how do you handle that? And it goes from, what could be a very lighthearted feeling game, kind of silly, kind of mystery Scooby-Doo club into, oh, there's the horror.
Awesome. And with that, where can people find you? What are you currently working on and can tell us about?
You can find me, man, I've been real bad about social media lately. I'm on Tumblr and Blue Sky as Impernius. I also do some stuff around Discord, the Onyx Path Discord. So you can find me in those places. I am also currently doing a lot of work over at Cephalofair on the Gloomhaven RPG. That has been my kind of nose to the grindstone thing for the past 2 years. It's been a while. But it's really close to completion. So it's like the last like 10% of the book takes all of my effort. But yeah, that's the thing I am working on right now. And it is also a game that, if you like dark fantasy that has that isn't always grimdark, but has like a light side to it to kind of break up some of the like really dark themes that are going on. The Gloomhaven world is phenomenal. I honestly like had such a good setting to work with when making that RPG. It was like I was like, I love everything about this game. I love I love everything about this group of playable characters. I love everything about this group of playable characters. What? I can play a sentient swarm of insects that wears a cloak and a mask to try to get along in the human world. Of course I want to play that. That sounds amazing.
That does sound amazing. I'll have to
Right?
check it out. I've only ever touched on Gloomhaven, like watching people play it in a
Yeah.
store and stuff. So
Yeah. I mean, the board game is really daunting. It's huge. It takes a long time to play. There's a ton of scenarios, but a lot of people really like the idea of it's a game that plays. It's a more narrative style board game that has like these what you're doing the play. It's very tactical and like moving pieces and trying to figure out how to solve the scenario through combat. But then the story around it is very like, oh no, and now we've got to make a decision to push the story forward, and that decision could lock us out of other scenarios. Holy crap, that's really cool. And so taking that into an RPG felt really natural because it's like a lot of people kind of already view it as like a GM-less RPG scenario, like kind of thing, and it just on rails. And so it's like, okay, well, how do we teach somebody to be a GM to take it off the rails and let you do whatever you want in the world? And that became a very cool exercise, and also just the lore for that game is very cool.
well, I'll have to check it out, and hopefully the viewers will check it out as
Yeah,
well. Thank you so much for your time, Danielle, and
of course.
I can't wait to see what else you develop in the future, what more awesome Curseborne stuff we have awaiting for us.
Of course. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.